It is a mysterious world inhabited by powerful creatures, both great and terrible. A world where one may exist naturally, or where one can be pulled with devices of evil. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the unseen world. Everything that transpires in Middle-earth falls into one of two worlds, seen or unseen. The seen is where the vast majority of events depicted in Tolkien's writings take place. The adventures of characters like Aragorn, Thorin Oakenshield, Túrin Turambar, and countless others all take place in this seen world. However, on occasion, we see points in the stories where characters cross over into the unseen, a realm of objects and creatures with magical properties. One of the most famous examples comes in the Fellowship of the Ring, when the Nazgul attack the company on Weathertop, and Frodo puts on the One Ring. Immediately, though everything else remained as before, dim and dark, the shapes became terribly clear. He was able to see beneath their black wrappings. There were 5 tall figures, 2 standing on the lip of the dell, 3 advancing. In their white faces burned keen and merciless eyes. Under their mantles were long gray robes. Upon their gray hairs were helms of silver. In their haggard hands were swords of steel. Their eyes fell on him and pierced him as they rushed towards him. Desperate, he drew his own sword, and it seemed to him that it flickered red, as if it was a firebrand. 2 of the figures halted. The third was taller than the others. His hair was long and gleaming, and on his helm was a crown. In one hand he held a long sword, and in the other a knife. Both the knife and the hand that held it glowed with a pale light. He sprang forward and bore down on Frodo. At that moment, Frodo threw himself forward on the ground, and he heard himself crying aloud, "O Elbereth Gilthoniel!" At the same time, he struck at the feet of his enemy. A shrill cry rang out in the night, and he felt a pain like a dart of poisoned ice pierce his left shoulder. Even as he swooned, he caught, as though a swirling mist, a glimpse of Strider leaping out of the darkness, with a flaming brand of wood in either hand. With a last effort, Frodo, dropping his sword, slipped the ring from his finger and closed his right hand tight upon it. Here we see the ring wraiths in their true form, terrible creatures of the unseen. Ironically, by putting on the ring, Frodo becomes more visible to the ring wraiths, as he is made to be more visible in the unseen rather than the seen. As he would be invisible to his fellow hobbits, he appears more prominently to the Nazgul. Now, the Nazgul are said to belong to the Wraith world, and while this sounds like a different thing entirely, it's worth noting that the Wraith world is merely an aspect of the unseen, the distinction likely being the nature by which they came to be visible there. In the Silmarillion, we learn of the Nine. Those who used the 9 rings became mighty in their day, kings, sorcerers, and warriors of old. They obtained glory and wealth, yet it turned to their undoing. They had, as it seemed, unending life, yet life became unendurable to them. They could walk, if they would, unseen by all eyes in this world beneath the sun, and they could see things in worlds invisible to mortal men. But too often they beheld only the phantoms and delusions of Sauron, and one by one, sooner or later, according to their native strength and to the good or evil of their wills in the beginning, they fell under the thraldom of the ring that they bore, and under the domination of the One, which was Sauron's, and they became forever invisible save to him that wore the ruling ring, and they entered into the realm of shadows. This description goes hand in hand with what Gandalf tells Frodo of the Rings of Power, saying that they were perilous, and "A mortal Frodo, who keeps one of the great rings, does not die, but he does not grow or obtain more life. He merely continues, until at last every minute is a weariness. And if he often uses the ring to make himself invisible, he fades. He becomes, in the end, invisible permanently. and walks in the twilight under the eye of the dark power that rules the rings. Yes, sooner or later if he is strong or well-meaning to begin with, but neither strength nor good purpose will last. Sooner or later, the dark power will devour him. With the Nazgul, like Bilbo and Frodo, we see that beings being transported into the unseen do not cease to exist in the seen. These are not actually separate worlds, but rather two aspects of the same. They are still capable of interacting with other beings and objects. In one of the earliest examples, we see that Bilbo, while wearing the ring at the Battle of Five Armies, is hit in the head by a stone and is knocked out. Just as the Nazgul fight in and use weapons of the seen world and wear their black robes to give them form. Yet it was not only the rings of power that could pull a mortal into the unseen. Indeed, the Morgul knife of the Witch King, of which a shard is stuck in Frodo's shoulder, was gradually having the same effect upon Frodo, pulling him into the Wraith world. Gandalf would later tell Frodo what would have occurred had he not been healed. They tried to pierce your heart with a Morgul knife, which remains in the wound. If they had succeeded, you would have become like they are, only weaker and under their command. You would have become a Wraith, under the dominion of the Dark Lord, and he would have tormented you for trying to keep his ring. While the unseen world is often a realm where heroes encounter evil creatures and bad things occur, the unseen world is itself not evil. Indeed, there are also good beings of great power who also exist in the unseen. We are told that indeed some of the most powerful heroes of Middle-earth have a strong presence in both worlds. The most notable encounter would be as Frodo is upon Asfaloth at the ford of Bruinen. As he is gradually being pulled into the realm of shadow, he sees a great shining being. With his last failing senses, Frodo heard cries, and it seemed to him that he saw, beyond the riders that hesitated on the shore, a shining figure of white light, and behind it ran small shadowy forms waving flames that flared red in the gray mist that was falling over the world. Back in Rivendell, Gandalf would tell Frodo that this shining figure was indeed Glorfindel. The small shadowy forms with him were Aragorn and the hobbits. While Glorfindel shines brightly with his unseen form, it's important to note that this was not the case for all elves, as Gandalf would also state that beings like Glorfindel did not fear the ring wraiths. He says, for those who have dwelt in the blessed realm live at once in both worlds, and against both the seen and the unseen, they have great power. The key point here is that this is a trait of beings who have lived in the blessed realm. Therefore, characters like Elrond and Celeborn, great as they may be, would not have this trait. Now, I have a full video on Glorfindel and his incredible lives. Yes, he basically has two of them. But not only was he born in Valinor, but he would return there after his death fighting a Balrog in the Fall of Gondolin. And in some of Tolkien's last writings, he would speak of the mighty increase of Glorfindel's power before he returns to Middle-earth. For long years he remained in Valinor, in reunion with the Eldar who had not rebelled, and in the companionship of the Maiar. To these he had now become almost an equal. For though he was an incarnate, to whom a bodily form not made or chosen by himself was necessary, his spiritual power had been greatly enhanced by his self-sacrifice. Yet Glorfindel, who had become nearly as mighty as the Maiar, was not the only force of good in the Third Age who had this trait. The Astari, or wizards, would also have a strong presence in both worlds, as would one of the greatest elves of the age, Galadriel. The daughter of Finarfin, long in exile from the Blessed Realm, would be one of the few beings to have this power. Another being that likely also existed in the unseen is Tom Bombadil, who could see Frodo when he put on the One Ring. Yet, while these great beings of the unseen could certainly stand their ground against the Nazgul, the greater threat of Sauron would keep Glorfindel from joining the Fellowship. As Gandalf points out to Elrond, "Even if you choose for us an elf lord such as Glorfindel, he could not storm the Dark Tower, nor open the road to the fire by the power that is in him." Not only would Glorfindel be unable to single-handedly take down Barad-dûr and Sauron himself, but given what we know of the unseen, Glorfindel would not help a mission of secrecy, when evil eyes would see him as a great shining figure of light. Thus do these parallel realms reside: the seen, domain of countless citizens of Arda, and the unseen, a place for beings of great power, yet also, for some, a prison of a tormented and dreadful form. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Next time on Nerd of the Rings.